Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Pure Presence Book Study, everyone. It's so good to see you all. And we're live on YouTube also, so welcome everyone that's here on YouTube. We'll just give everyone a minute to get their favorite seat. And I know this thing likes to talk when I. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Here it is. Huh. Welcome to Pure Presence Book Study, everyone. It always picks that up. All right, so good to see everyone. Hi, Jenny Beal.
Hi, Bill. Hi, everyone.
Good to see you all today. Thank you for being here. Jenny and I spend a couple of minutes before we get started and sort things out just a little bit. And we were just talking because Francis has offered to join us. So we're going to invite him to come in and join us either March the 2nd or the 9th, and we'll wait to find out which one works best for him. But when we started this book study, I asked him if he would join us, and he said he would. So we're going to bring him in for one of those two dates if they're available. And it'll be a time where we won't really cover the book at all. It'll be a time to ask any questions of Francis. And I would recommend, Rupert talks about when he was a student of Francis, he said sometimes he would spend weeks formulating a question for Francis. So I guess it would be what it comes through as an inspired question and really concise would be a good idea for that meeting time. But I'm very excited that we'll have Francis right here with us as we look at his content. His book, as you know, The Perfume of Silence, and his other books are just really invaluable when you're on this path. And I'm finding these questions to have the questions are great questions, and the answers are just filled with concise wisdom. And I so appreciate that. Today, we're going to keep going on the balance or the rest of chapter two. There is no there. And we left off on page 30. So we'll begin this week on page 31. And if we have time, we'll do a practice. There was a practice that was offered here in these pages, a couple of pages further on. There's a practice that we'll do our own investigation right here. And if you have questions, just raise your hand and put your hand up, and we'll start taking questions at the half hour. And Jenny, I would love it if you would just get us started on this week. This is exciting. I just love the content that's here.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. So as you say, we'll start on page 31, and for Kindle users, that's page 27. So the question. So it's not up to me to feel the joy, but rather to see the separation clearly. And it's so tempting to try to turn these ideas into something that we do. But Francis says that if we see it that way, it becomes an obstacle. Trying to get rid of the doer won't work. And he says, don't focus on the doer. Let go of the doer, whatever something else arises in consciousness. Contemplate whatever appears in the now. If the doer appears in the now, then welcome it. If it leaves, let it go. So nothing's really a problem. Everything just arises in consciousness and dissolves out of consciousness, and it's just not a problem.
It's just it's just, I mean, it's so easy. It's so easy that
Yes.
we miss it.
Yeah.
It just being, present and aware. It's a natural flow of experience. And I like what Francis says that I think he says it later on in this book even where he says that there are no accidents. It might be in this. It might be there's no circumstances that are accidents. So as we just allow these things to occur, no doer. There's a witness to the experience, and that's a little bit difficult for us to grasp as we begin uh, to walk in this manner of being. It becomes more of a flow. It's just so gentle, and it's actually even imbues love. It brings a different a different definition and direct experience of what love really is.
Mhm. So Audrey's just asked a question about that. The practice of being aware of being aware. Uh, it's being aware of being aware rather than being aware of awareness, Audrey. A little slight subtle difference, because if you use the word awareness, it makes it sound more like an object, because the word awareness is a noun. Um, I think it's something we just enjoy and experience rather than regard as a practice. Um, Francis doesn't like the word practice, because for him, what practice means is that we repeat the same thing over and over again quite often during the day. And he's very anti that. He regards things as experiments. And he says, if you're invited to perform an experiment, then perform it. This is really an experiment where we're invited to uh, perform, just to be aware of being aware. And after a while, we don't need to try to do it anymore. It just happens. We just are aware of being aware, whatever else is going on.
Yeah, the it's kind of a paradox for me because uh, we almost need a practice to let go of an old default. We almost need a regimen, something that disconnects us from an old habit. But we have to be aware, and I think what Rupert and what Francis point to is don't look for the practice because the practice will become the new default.
Yes, yes, exactly. And it's really, if we see a habit which relates to a feeling of separation, if we see that turning up, then just the seeing of it turning up is itself an invitation. And that invitation may take all sorts of forms. It may take the form of just remembering those words, be aware of being aware. It may just suddenly transport you into the depths, the silence of yourself. You're just open to whatever way that invitation shows up. And in that sense, it's not so much a practice. We've noticed something that isn't helpful to us, that potentially causes suffering, and that noticing is its own invitation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It begins to take on an influence that is uh, it's more intuitive. and it's somehow it's a known pull that pulls you to the experience in just a natural way, it seems like.
Yes, yes.
So on that first question, that was the um, the first question. I felt we covered that, and the second question is, I find that seeing something and naming it are almost inseparable. This is an interesting, I mean, yeah, I think this is an important answer. Don't name your naming,
Yes.
right? We're becoming accustomed to um, not being involved as awareness, not being involved in um, the labeling. What I've noticed in my own experience in this practice is you become less interested in um, uh, so much questioning things. You become less interested in finding out. I mean, you know what's kind of funny? This is a little bit of a side note. I don't know if you have the same experience, Jenny, but you become less interested in wanting to find out all about someone's history,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because it just becomes less interesting. And
Mm.
not that you don't care, but small talk becomes less interesting.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I
But
mean, if people want to tell you their history, then it's okay to listen, but you can listen with a sort of light touch, can't you? Yeah.
yeah, because I think what
Mm.
happens is I think the natural thing that occurs is the I becomes less and less. The I, oh, I'm this and I'm that and
Mm.
and I have these credentials and I'm done this and that just becomes less important to each of us.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So it says, so that's part of the labeling, I think, a little bit.
Mm.
He says, don't try to get rid of it. It is enough just to see it. Okay, so he says, after all, when you are naming, that is what is present in the now, don't make it a problem. It is just an old habit of grasping with the mind. Don't try to get rid of it. It is enough just to see it. Of course, there are times when naming is necessary, and then we simply use this tool and replace it in the toolbox when it is no longer required. Thought is not the thing that it refers to, it is a theory. The theory of a thing is not the thing itself. Thought doesn't lead to reality, it only takes us to its own ending.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I like the idea of not naming because awareness doesn't name, it doesn't have labels. Awareness doesn't judge, it's the no judgment zone. There's no good or bad, right or wrong. So all of that is a participant in resting as awareness, resting in awareness as being.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So then he goes on to understanding on still page 31, Kindle page 28 says one, where does understanding happen? And I thought it might be worth telling people about that. Some people have heard this that somewhere about the Chinese room. If you come across that one, Bill, the Chinese room.
Oh yeah.
Yes, the idea, it's an explanation of where well, the fact that understanding doesn't happen in the mind. So there's this Chinese guy, and he's in a room, and he doesn't speak French, and he doesn't speak English either. But what he's got is he's got a set of French English dictionaries and grammars and things, and he's got a set of instructions, a bit like instructions you give to a computer, for how to translate from one language to another. So then he's given a French text and he is told to translate it. And he very carefully follows these instructions and uses the dictionaries and the grammar. And he produces an English text. And if that's shown to an English person, then they understand it absolutely perfectly. But the Chinese man can't understand it at all because he doesn't speak either French, the original is in French, or English, and he knows nothing of either language. So he has no access to meaning. And that's really the situation with the mind. The mind has no access to meaning.
Yes, yeah, yeah, and also it's the same as a camera. You know, if you take a photograph of with a picture of everything that the body's eyes is looking at right now, you take that photograph. The camera can't label one thing in the photograph.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
it's the body mind that's going to label things based on references and historical data or beliefs. It's going to now label all of these experiences, but the camera, it sees everything as just one thing.
Yeah. But the labels are really just like the dictionaries that the Chinese man looks up in. Yeah.
There it is. Yeah. Well,
Is it-
let's turn the page to 32. The 32 is a continuation. Most of page 32 is a continuation of where does understanding happen? Where does understanding happen? Actually, um, it says when the question is present, the answer, the understanding. Oh, wait a minute. Understanding doesn't happen in the mind. We may ponder a question, and at some point the question vanishes, and we have a flash of understanding, of insight. We can all relate to that, I'm sure. When the question is present, the answer, the understanding, is absent. Likewise, when the answer appears, the question has, by definition, disappeared. Then we say, now I have the answer. However, between asking the question and formulating the answer, the mind is not present because the mind is simply the questioning and formulating process. It is at precisely this timeless moment when the mind is not present between the question and the formulation of the answer, that understanding takes place. Therefore, if neither the question nor the formulation of the answer is present when understanding actually takes place, it cannot be said that we understand a thought. What is it, then, that we actually understand? Understanding understands itself. It returns us to our true nature, consciousness, which is pure intelligence. It is the answer. Understanding doesn't take place somewhere. It is our true nature. So I really like that description because it's when understanding comes in that questions are unnecessary. It's when understanding uh, comes in, we start to feel the joy of of knowing, of just
yes.
being.
Yes, it's a collapse of the question. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to look at on that question or that page, Jenny? Page 32.
I think just to mention this beautiful idea that understanding love and beauty are all the same, which I think is lovely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, this is starting to come in for me. I first heard Rupert speak about it, that understanding and beauty and love are all coming from the same place. I'm just beginning to connect with that understanding, where beauty, where you feel beauty. Beauty is, it speaks a language of love. I really didn't connect with that when I first heard Rupert speak of that. But in the last few months, and especially when I start to see it written by others, other authors, other teachers, I'm starting to begin to understand how beauty, and looking at a beautiful mountain or looking at a bird or looking at the ocean or the snow or whatever, it has a quality to it that I didn't see before.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So we have on page 32, the bottom of the page, the question is there anything one can do to facilitate the understanding you are speaking of?
Yes.
Can we hurry this up? I want to wake up.
And he says this alleged entity is an object, cannot do anything, so it should go back to sleep and leave us to have a good time. I like that.
Yeah.
And then the next question is about feeling hopeless, when he says that there's nothing you can do about unhappiness. But he then explains that when we really understand that the separate entity that we imagine ourselves to be really can't do anything, then automatically we stop striving, and all of the obstacles to happiness just disappear. We know we can't do anything, so we just relax and everything's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I have underlined halfway down that paragraph. This is the direct path, standing knowingly as consciousness under all circumstances. The gradual untangling of the knots in the body and the mind, the contractions and the beliefs may take time. However, we start from our true nature, from a glimpse of it. We don't end with it. It is a top-down approach in which the body and the mind are gradually realigned with our experience and understanding of truth.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
This would be a major difference between the direct path and the progressive path, because when you start with the top down, you're really you're really standing in the light of awareness. You're standing in the light of consciousness, and there's no doer. That's why there's no practice. It's the light of awareness that is just, it's divesting the belief that the mind thought that it was separate.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I need do nothing. There's that line in the course that says I need do
Yes,
nothing.
exactly.
That's the reference
Yes, it is.
where those two ideas match.
Mm. Yeah.
Oh, here it is. It's halfway down on this page. It says there's a question that says, it seems that it is so simple we can't believe it. Consciousness is present all the time, and the play appears within it, and yet we keep sticking to the play. And then Francis says, and that too is part of the play. Um, so there are no accidents.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard Francis Lucille say, there are no accidents?
Yes. Everything that happens is an opportunity to remember ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Rick has
remember,
asked. Oh,
oh,
sorry.
I
Uh,
remember interviewing Francis prior to the last summit conference that we had. And he was talking about this very subject. And he said, there are no accidents. We didn't choose to meet today. We have been chosen.
yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And you were saying about a question?
Rick was asking a question: can a belief be rooted in either a conceptual view or a glimpse? And yes, that can happen. It's very easy if you've had a glimpse, then automatically the mind will try to conceptualize it in some way or another, and that's absolutely fine, because that conceptualization, a sudden memory of that can take you straight back there. But it can be a problem, if you turn it into a belief. This is what I saw then is how things are, because your memory of what I saw then is not that real experience. It's only a memory, it's a shadow of, uh, of the real experience.
Did that answer your question there, Rick? And Rick also has a great comment. What understands and where it occurs is probably the biggest nugget in this chapter. What understands and where it occurs. Where would you say it occurs?
Well, understanding in a way is a synonym for awareness, isn't it? Um,
Yes.
he
Yeah.
says understanding, love, beauty, all of those are inherent aspects of awareness.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that's why we often, I mean, I first started hearing this word understanding from Rupert as it does clearly navigate I into the no I zone to claim something.
Yes. Yeah.
Understanding is like a knowing. There's no one, there's no ego or a personal self to claim it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all beyond mind. Yeah, Rick says
Mm.
understanding is all beyond mind. And Jade said, I so love that we were chosen. Yes, and I believe that as I was woken before my 3:45 a.m. alarm wake and ready to drink in the magic. Is it 3:45 a.m. where you are, Jade? Oh my God.
Wow. We
Where
don't
are
know where
you?
Jade
Are
is.
you in Australia? You must be in Australia. Okay. Um, there was on, let's see. We're on 32. Is there anything? Oh, okay, that was the one. Is there anything that one can do to facilitate understanding? And
Yeah.
then, okay, so we looked at 33. If anyone has any points of reference on page 33, we'll look at those. Otherwise, we'll go to 34. And there's a continuation of that last question on 34. If there is only consciousness and all perceptions, sensations, and thoughts arise from and return to consciousness, are all objects an illusion? And he answers that with, when we say that objects are an illusion, we mean that it is an illusion that objects have their own existence, separate from consciousness. The experience of a separate object seems real, but the reality of this experience comes from consciousness. The object borrows its reality from consciousness. When objects are present, they are real as consciousness. They have no reality in themselves. That's a really important distinction right there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they are not present in consciousness, we cannot say that they exist.
Yes, they can have existence separate from mind, but not separate from consciousness.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a really important distinction, because that would cause it to be separate.
yes. If you say that they're dependent on mind, then that can end up with solipsism quite easily. So
Yeah.
that's not so much the case. It's that they're not separate from consciousness.
Right.
The question from Anne actually relates to that. She says, does that mean there is nothing that is not beautiful? And really, it's not the objects that are beautiful. Beauty itself is an aspect of what we are, of consciousness. And it's that some objects seem to have a special power to take us to that sense of beauty. But in fact, all objects, if you look at them, can take you back to yourself. But some just in a flash whip you back there immediately, and that's what we call a beautiful object.
Yeah. What's interesting is, no matter what you're perceiving, no matter what you're looking at, the pointing back to the witness, or the pointing back to what is aware of the experience, brings one back to experience what God is, or what we would say what God is. It brings you back to experience God as the witness of the experience.
Yes, and God as in ourself.
Yes, yes,
We are the witness of all experience.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
and that brings a sort of expansiveness, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
Yeah,
also beauty. It also brings
yeah,
the beauty, the love, the presence, all of those attributes, all of those words that we use to describe the indescribable everything. It
yes,
says
yeah,
on the second paragraph on the top of page 34, the kind of the summarizing that paragraph above. It says, the moment we understand that objects have no existence separate from consciousness, they cease to be a distraction from consciousness and become instead pointers that reveal it.
yes, yes,
That's like everything for me, everything is the recognition of our own being as the witness of all experience.
Yes.
So we have this practice. Would you like to walk us through this practice that's next?
Yes,
It's in
sure.
the question. It starts with the question.
Yes, the questioner says what you say makes sense intellectually, but in practice, I still feel there are things that are separate from myself. For instance, I feel that this chair is separate from myself. And so he says, and this is something that we can do, but I suggest perhaps we close our eyes in order to do that. Touch the chair with your hands, and without interpreting your experience in any way, ask yourself if that sensation, whatever exactly it is separate from you, whatever you are.
Right. So it brings it directly in as an inner experience that is it can't be found to be separate from what I am experience is.
Yes, there's no dividing line. Any dividing line would be an interpretation. That's why he says don't interpret it. So it's the answer is no. It's very simple. And he said, now transpose that understanding to all your sense perceptions and ask yourself again if anything you ever experience is actually separate from yourself.
You can't find a different answer. You can't find
No.
the answer when you breathe, when you have, and a lot of meditations would start out with just become aware of your breath. Well, that awareness of the breath, it's pointing you to the experience of all sensation, the breathing sensation, and all sensations occur in the awareness of them,
Yes. Yeah.
or they reveal themselves in the awareness of them.
Mm.
This is a great question. The next one, it says, from the medical point of view, consciousness is different from what you are from what you are talking about. From a medical point of view, he's describing, and I found it very interesting the two different uh, uh, references that he gives to this idea of a medical point of view versus a perceptual point of view.
Yes, and in fact, he gives two, or certainly implies two different medical points of view in this. The first one is you're a doctor and you haven't got any equipment, and you say, is this person conscious? And the things you look for are they aware of their surroundings? Can they hear me when I talk to them? And things like that. Um, so that's one. The other one is if you're a neuroscientist and you've got all sorts of little probes into their brain, and you're taking images, their brain, fMRI or whatever, and you can. It's what's called neural correlates. You can correlate what you see in the brain, the patterns in the brain, with what the person is awake. You don't have to give them anesthetic for this. They what they say and what they report back to you. So that's neural correlates. But what he says is that in both cases, you don't actually you can't actually find out whether the brain, you can't prove that the brain actually causes consciousness, because a person might be conscious in a medical sense, in the sense that he has within his mind ideas and images are appearing, but you might not, as a doctor, be aware of that. So you can't really relate the two in that way. You can't say one causes the other, which is the materialist perspective. It's the brain causes the mind, and the mind causes consciousness. You're muted, Bill. You've gone mute.
I tried to explain awareness to my son-in-law one time. I said, well, what is it that is aware of your experience? His name is Matt. I'd say, what is it that is aware of your experience, Matt? He'd say, my brain. My brain is aware of it. And it's just a typical,
really.
answer from someone who is, just has no understanding of these ideas at all.
Yes, yes. Francis sometimes uses the model of mind as a biocomputer, and in that case, you can say that the brain is just what mind looks like from the outside. They're just a biocomputer,
Right.
so that's why.
Yeah.
Going back to the understanding, mind doesn't understand anything. Brain doesn't understand anything, and it's only consciousness that understands.
Right, right.
Yes.
I found it was interesting when he brought up later on the there's a paragraph on page 36, and we'll come back to 35 because there was some really good stuff on 35 that talked about the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita. But on page 36, I like the references that he uses on this medical idea as it relates to fear. I never knew the the differences in fear, one being psychological and one being biological. And I think that's important because I like to feed birds, and we have cats, and you see squirrels running around, and if you watch their activity, you go, well, is there fear in these animals that causes them to run from you just from hearing you? And if you ever watch the bird, they're always like on the alert. They're always doing this, and little animals and stuff are. And it's interesting to me that there is a built-in biological fear that is a natural reaction to the body mind experience, but it's not the psychological one. And I find it interesting that one is very natural and inherent in consciousness, and the other one is built in based on the psychological uh, uh, conditioning that
Yes.
that comes with the with the body mind.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And it is important to distinguish between the two, because we do need to. If we feel biological fear, then that's a sign that the body needs to take some action to avoid it,
Yes, yes,
whatever it is.
yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I've sort of sometimes if you're ever walking alone in a dark area, well, is that psychological? Yes, it probably is. And it doesn't mean that that it's, maybe you're just being alert, and then the mind grabs a hold of it and turns it into images.
It could be biological. It depends. In some parts of town, you get a subway under the road, and you know that sometimes people have been mugged walking through that subway at night, and that would be an intelligent fear, wouldn't it? Perhaps you can avoid going underneath that subway.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
yeah.
yes, yes. Yeah, or if you know an area is dangerous, well, what brought that information in could just be insight. It could just be intuitive that
Yes,
says, yeah, consciousness says that's probably not a very safe area for this body-mind experience. There's gangs around that subway stop, and you choose to avoid it, right?
yes, yes, exactly. But I love his description of psychological fear, because he describes it as fear that doesn't arise out of a real situation, but rather from a projection of an imaginary personal entity into a hypothetical situation in the future. And it makes it so clear that it's not at all real and that you really can't take it too seriously.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, that brings you back to just being, I mean, the new default that I find that is it's finding a resting place is a default, this default of awareness, the default of just presence. It has a quality of experience that the body mind never knew before. The Bill didn't know this experience prior to this understanding.
Yes, yes.
If we go back to page 35, there was midway on that page, Francis says each of us is consciousness, and consciousness is that through which whatever we know is known. If it could be investigated as an object, it would have to be known by something else. And this something else would, in turn, be what we call consciousness.
Yeah.
And I just really like that description. It just seems so very clear. What, would you like to add anything to that, Jenny?
Yes, it's an example of how we walk our way back to consciousness. If we end up as an object, then we have to walk back a little bit further. Yeah,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that's really that's what he's doing here, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even so go back just a little bit further because even that is being seen.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. And there is a question here from Catherine. Hi, Catherine. Good to see you again. Is the thought need to know real?
All thoughts um, are real in the sense that they have a dependent reality. Anything you think has a dependent reality in the same way as objects have a dependent reality. And what they depend on is consciousness. So without consciousness, thoughts can't exist, and perceptions of objects equally can't exist. So I think there's something probably more behind your question. Um, do we need to know things? Yeah, there are some things we need to know. Um, if you're in the UK, probably the US at the moment, you need to know the rules about COVID. Otherwise, you might get, well, apart from spreading COVID to other people, you might get arrested by the police. So, there's basic relative things that we need to know. But that's always knowing of objects or knowing of phenomena. The other kind of knowing is knowing of noumenal experience. So that's the knowing only knowing. That's the the knowing of the subject of experience,
Oh yeah.
consciousness.
Yeah, there is a a kind of a shift in understanding that point right there.
Yes, yes, we have to distinguish between those two kinds of knowing, the phenomenal knowing and the noumenal knowing.
Yeah. Well, there's an absolute
Yeah.
knowing that just is.
Yeah, well, that's the noumenal knowing, really. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Mm.
Lindsay says, is this what is meant by swimming upstream?
Well,
And
swimming upstream sounds really tricky. I'm not sure
you want to
what you're
ask that?
referring
You want
to.
to come on and ask
Do you
that?
want to ask
Uh,
that, Lindsay?
you want to come on and ask that, Lindsay? What do you mean by that?
I think I've read certain, I think it's equivalent with like the golden thread concept and walking your way back. And when you said, Jenny, that in the middle of page 35, investigating what is the something that is observing what's being experienced.
Yes.
I've read, I thought it was, I'm not sure which book it was in, but something about swimming upstream. And I never really understood that. And so that's why I thought, hey, maybe this is what that means, is the golden thread, walking yourself backwards.
I think swimming upstream sounds rather more hard work than what Francis is.
Maybe it was going back to swimming up to source, or what was it? Maybe that's what I meant by that.
I think it's going back to the source.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
But the swimming, I mean, I'm imagining trying to swim upstream in a strong current, and I think I'm not really good at swimming. I think I'd find it rather hard work. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Lindsay, for asking that. And to me, upstream, Rick says, to me, upstream implies moving toward the phenomenal objects versus the noumena.
Okay.
Moving towards the objects. I don't know. To me, I mean, moving towards the objects is just is just giving, involving, losing the self in favor of the objects. Is sort of ignoring the self.
Yes, I think that's what Rick is suggesting. Whereas,
Yeah,
maybe the just floating downstream is a bit more relaxing. Shall we read? I really love this story of King Janaka.
yes.
Shall we read that? That one is,
yes, let's
is
do
beautiful.
that. We have about
This is on
7
page 37 or Kindle page 32.
Okay, thanks.
It was a beautiful warm night. This is about King Janaka's awakening. It was a beautiful warm night with a gentle breeze, and I was in the garden of the royal palace. I was lying on my bed with my beloved. We had just made love. The birds were singing, and the fragrance of the flowers was beautiful. We were drinking delicious wine. At that moment, I heard in the distance the Brahmin chanting the Veda, and I woke up. And there's some interesting lessons here. It's significant that he was happy. He had a lovely woman by his side, and he was relaxed. He was enjoying the beauty around him. The wine probably helped the relaxation too, I expect. It's really a lesson for all of us. Maybe the woman or the man is optional. Purring cat might do, but it's this relaxation and enjoyment of life, and it's that brings the recognition of what we are.
Yeah, Yeah, this has the picture of a gentle surrender, just a very loving, gentle surrender versus the contrast, which was in the question related to fear. So
Yes,
he
yeah,
just gave a really different picture, and and another variety of how awakening, enlightenment takes place. It doesn't take place always, and mostly on the basis of fear. He says, "Why is it so often?" So he's using the word often, said of people who have realized their true nature or self realized that the overcoming of the fear of death brought about a dramatic change. Is it necessary for realization to happen in this way? That was Ramana's experience. Was he had this tremendous fear of death and then
yes,
realized it wasn't that it wasn't true.
yeah,
And I love this description that Francis gives because this has a whole different way of experiencing self-realization.
yes, it is. So natural and so easy, isn't it?
Yeah. There's another really great question under that one. Why do some get realization and others not?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful what he says here about ignorance, that we have the freedom to remain in ignorance. We have the freedom to suffer, if we choose to. We have the freedom to identify with the body or the mind. We're free to carry the baggage of the past. Um, it, it's lovely, this freedom. And um, what he says a little bit later in answer to the next question, I think is very important. When you move away from this ignorance, it's no longer a problem because you see this freedom in all human beings. You see them as this freedom, so you don't want to convert them because nothing is a problem.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
We are freedom itself. We are we are what we're looking for. We're the water that the fish is looking for.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Doug found that piece in the book talking about going upstream. It's in this book where he talks
Mhm.
about going upstream to source. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Page 16.
Page
Yeah. Thank
16.
you, Missy. I think, yeah, Missy found it too.
Missy
Thank
found
you.
that, right.
Good. Rick says enlightenment stories can be very misleading. Food goals for the mind. Yes, you're right. You're right. Absolutely. That's why mystical experiences are not helpful. I remember I was having chicken with Muji in Portugal. We were all about 16 of us went to a chicken place. We left the ashram and we went to we you have to drive for nearly 2 hours. And this is a special night that we only do once every couple of weeks or once a month. And I was sitting across from Muji and I began giving a mystical experience story. I'm telling you, it was like, I mean, Muji zeroed in on me and more or less said, okay, that's enough. That's enough of that. I mean, he just busted me mid talk about a mystical experience. It was just really riveting. It's like he was sitting right across the table from
Oh,
me.
yes.
I felt like, oh my God, what just happened? Anyway, this has been a great time looking at the second half of chapter 2 with all of you. Thank you. We're at the end of our time together. We'll meet next week and look at chapter 3. Just say yes. Just say yes. Say yes to everything, and you'll be good. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. And Jenny, thank you again for being an awesome co-host, and loved all the questions. And you guys, thanks for your engagement. And we'll see you next week. I'll unmute the mic and we'll say goodbye, and we'll see you then.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
This is great.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank
Love
you.
you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.